God allows shakeups in our lives to call our attention back to him.
Dr. Tony Evans says there's an upside to down times.
One of the benefits of trials is to let you see God is bigger than your problem.
This is The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. Today, Dr. Evans brings us some helpful insights on the trials of our lives and how to survive them. Let's join him as he takes us to Mark chapter 14 for today's lesson.
Now, if you are a Christian, you are going to have trials. Fact is, if you're human, you're going to have trials. The difference is that trials in the life of Christians are purposeful. They're not just events that are randomly occurring without meaning and purpose. Jesus has just done a marvelous miracle. He has taken 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes, had a word of prayer of them, and wound up with Orca the killer whale on the beach. He has fed 5,000 men, not counting women and children, somewhere between 15 and 25,000 people. What a miracle. We ended last time noting that John's rendition of this event says that when the people saw him do this miracle, they decided to make him king. Anybody who can take loaves and fish and turn them into a Moby Dick sandwich ought to be in charge. But Jesus was not about to be a welfare king. He was not willing to be elected simply to service the agenda of men. He was not simply willing to be recognized because of the goodies he could hand out. Please note in verse 22 of Matthew 14 we read, "And immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And after he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to the mountain to pray, and when it was evening, he was there alone, and the boat was already many stadia away from the land, battered by the waves, for the wind was contrary." The disciples are going through a trial. They leave the feeding of the 5,000, they wind up in a boat, and the boat is now in a storm, causing great havoc. They are in a negative circumstance of life. I know that when I look out on an audience this size, for some of you, it's sprinkling. For others, it's raining. Others of us are in a downright storm. It says that the weather was contrary to them. They were rowing this way. The storm was pushing this way. In fact, we're told by Mark that when they put their oars in the water, it was of no use because the opposition to their every effort was horrendous. They were in a negative situation. But I want you to notice something here. Jesus, knowing they were going into a storm, put them in it anyway. Point, they were in a trial and at the same time in the will of God. Jesus made them go into the boat. To put it another way, obedience does not negate obstacles. You can be perfectly in the plan of God and be in a storm. They were right where God wanted them to be because he made them go. Some of you here today are in forced situations. Situations that you had no control over. Situations that overwhelmed you. Situations you got caught in. And to the best of your knowledge, you were in the will of God when you got in the situation. So were the disciples. They were 3.5 miles out, we're told by John. They're being battered by the waves. They're being beaten up. And if you're in a trial today that's beating you up, and Jesus put you there, then there is no contradiction to being in the will of God and being in a storm. because God's purposes includes trials. James 1:3 says, "Count it all joy, my brethren, when you come into different kinds of trials." That leads to a second point, and that is that the authority of Christ encourages us through our trials. Now, the authority of Christ controls the fact we're in them in the first place. And even if you're in a trial because of a sin, it's the authority of Christ that controls the repercussions you face. And so the key is turning that temptation into a trial through your commitment or recommitment to the will of God. He says in verse 25, "And it was in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the water." They're 3.5 miles from shore, from the shoreline. But Jesus wasn't on the shoreline. Jesus had gone up into a mountain to pray. What does this tell us about Jesus? Number one, even though he's in a mountain many miles away, he knew what was going on. Okay? Not only did he know what was going on, omniscience, but he also saw what was going on, and having seen what was going on, he decided after his prayer meeting with the Father to go for a walk. Now watch this. They are made to get in the boat after they feed the 5,000. They fed the 5,000 between the watch that went from like 4 to 6, 3 to 6 in the afternoon. It is now 3 to 6 in the morning. So for 12 hours, these guys are out here struggling. For 12 hours, they're out there hurting, wondering whether they're going to live or die, and Jesus is on a mountain praying. But at the right time, they look up and see a ghost. Look at verse 26. "And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were frightened, saying, 'It is a ghost.'" The Greek word "saw" means to stare intently at. The Greek word for ghost is the word where we get our English word phantom. It is the word phantasmos. What they saw as horrible was going to be their help. If you're in a storm, hold on a little while longer. You say, "But it's getting worse," but that worse may be your answer. You say, "But I'm having to fight off a ghost." It may be Jesus showing up, but you can't see it because you're in the storm. Yeah, I know it was nighttime, and I know it was dark, and they couldn't see, and the waves were making the sight cloudy, but hang in there a little while longer because it may be Jesus, and you just don't know it yet. He says, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Brothers and sisters, there is no storm you're in that Jesus can't find you. Okay? And if he can walk on water, that means the elements can't stop him from getting to you. So no matter what you are facing and how bad it is, Jesus can walk on it. See, the beautiful thing is that the storm was consuming the disciples, but they only were a bridge for Jesus. The same things that were hurting the disciples became his footpath. The same trial was his opportunity to do his thing. That's why you count it all joy. You don't count it all joy because you're in the storm. You count it all joy because you're going to get to see Jesus walk on it. You're going to see Jesus, in spite of all that's going on, at his time, walk on the storm. He addressed their inner storm before he addressed their external storm. He didn't first say, "Peace, be still." He first said, "Gentlemen, hearts, calm down." God wants to fix what's wrong inside before he ever fixes what's wrong outside. Because what he's after is your commitment to him. He's not just after changing your financial status. He doesn't change the external circumstance until he first changes their internal condition. Don't be afraid. There's a lot to be afraid of today. But they found solace in the fact that Jesus was there. That's all you got to know. If it's not God's will to end the storm, at least know Jesus is there. Because if you're in a storm and he's not there, then you're in trouble. Peter, the one who, he was just an impetuous person, and he would do things on the spur of the moment. Now, we give Peter a hard time, but Peter really loved the Lord. Because even when he failed the Lord, at least he was there. The others had run for their lives. But even when he denied the Lord, he was at least close to the Lord. So he was always wanting to be close to the Lord. Always wanting to be close to the Lord. So he'd take the initiative. So point 3 is that the authority of Christ loves us during our trials. He shows up to encourage us, and then he loves us during. Peter says, command me, verse 28, would you command me to come? That's very powerful. Peter says, I'm not going out there unless you tell me. I'm scared already in here, so I'm not about to walk out there without a call from you. Even in the midst of the trial, you can call on God for him to tell you what you can do next. What does James 1:5 say? If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. And he gives liberally. Peter says, can I walk out there? Why did Peter want to walk out there? So he could showboat? That's not why he wanted to walk out there. Peter wanted to walk out there because he believed it would be safer with Jesus on the water than without him in the boat. Peter wanted to be close to Christ. He always wanted to be close to Christ. And so if you are going through a trial, get as close to Christ as you can possibly get. Peter's a man of faith because he steps out on the trial. But look what happened. He said, come, and Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. Verse 30 says, and seeing the wind, he became afraid and began to sink. He cried out saying, Lord, save me. Now watch this now. He had faith to get him out of the boat, but he did not have sustaining faith. He had faith to get started. He didn't have faith to keep going. Why? Because he took his eyes off of Christ. Now, it was the same storm that he was looking at when he was in the boat. It's just now, because he's gotten a little victory in the storm, he forgot unless you keep your eyes on Jesus, you'll sink at any moment. Just because today in your trial is better than yesterday don't mean you're there yet. Keep your eyes on Jesus. We'll run to Jesus, but as soon as we get a little relief, think everything's okay and wind up sinking. He says, you got to keep your eyes on me, Peter. Don't start with me and then take your eyes off of me. Stop looking at the circumstances and start looking at the Savior. Don't just say because you made a good start, you're going to make it. So Peter began focusing on what was challenging his faith rather than focusing on his faith. That is, keeping his eyes on Jesus Christ, making that the paramount of his being.
Dr. Evans will come back with a down-to-earth example of that principle when he continues our message in just a moment. Right now, though, he's here in the studio with a word for us. Dr. Evans?
When a person becomes a partner with us at the Urban Alternative, they are making an investment. They're not just giving a gift. They're making an investment because we're going to take that gift and we're going to use that gift to expand our impact in the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, not only around America, but around the world. We're going to be seeing people's personal lives change as they come to Christ and as they grow into discipleship as followers of Christ. We're going to show people their roles in the family, whether you're the man, the woman, or the child, and show how family unity is to be maintained. We're going to use that gift to strengthen churches, to help the pastor become more equipped, more effective, to give them tools and resources to use for the growth of their ministry. And then we're going to give them a template for changing their community through the National Church Adopted School Initiative. And your gift, the gift of a person to the Urban Alternative, will help us do that and replicate that over and over again. So no, it's not just giving so you can hear a sermon. It's giving so you can help change a world.
And as our way of saying thanks for any contribution you can make right now, large or small, we'll send you a copy of Tony's current 8-CD series, The Authority of Christ. That's our way of investing in you when you invest in the ministry of the alternative. So visit tonyevans.org or give us a phone call at 1-800-800-3222 and let us know we can count on you. Right now, though, here's Dr. Evans once again with more of our message.
Yesterday I was in the back of my house, and Karis, my little granddaughter, was screaming. and running to the door because Casey was loose. You have to understand, we're accumulating a little farm at my house. Because of my son's love for animals, I got 2 dogs, 2 rabbits, 2 birds, and we almost had a mule. Okay? So Casey's one of the dogs, the bigger the dogs, and little Karis just got real scared because it looked like he wasn't loose, but looked like he was loose. He had the chain attached to him. She calls me Poppy. She came, said, Poppy, Poppy, Poppy. I said, what? She said, Casey gonna get me, Casey gonna get me. So she jumped up in my arms. And then she looked at Casey and went. See, it all depends on where you are. See, if you're around Casey and you that small, you're going to be terrified. If you jump in the arms of somebody bigger than your Casey, you can lick your tongue at it. And if you jump in Jesus' arms, you can lick your tongue at your trials. It doesn't make them go away, but it means you're with somebody bigger than what you're facing. As long as Peter looked at his circumstances, he would begin to sink. But as soon as he looked at the Lord, things changed again. He said, Lord, save me. And I like this phrase. It says, verse 31, and immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, O ye of little faith, why did you doubt? Now, notice this is not a total condemnation. O ye of little faith. Some of us are O ye of no faith. We don't even get started. At least he got started. He says, no. Get started. Leave church this morning saying, Jesus, I'm going to look to you in my circumstance. I don't know why it's going on. I don't know for how long it's going to go on, but I am going to keep my focus on you, and I'm going to do the oars. I'm going to do all that I'm supposed to do, but my focus is going to be on your power and on your grace and on your knowledge and on your love, and I won't turn from the right or the left of you. Because if you take your eyes off of Jesus, you're going to sink. Well, that leads to a fourth point. And it's simply this. The authority of Christ gives meaning to the trials of life. In other words, when you go through a trial, that trial will have a purpose to it. James 1:12 says this. Blessed is the man who endures through trials. For when he is finished, he's going to come forth like gold. There's a reason. I can't tell you the reason for your trial. You can't tell me the reason for my trial. Some of us already know the reason for our trials. We may have caused them or created them. Some we don't have the slightest idea. But if you keep following Jesus Christ, there will be a reason for the trial season. Notice verse 32. And when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. Okay? When Jesus reached them, the trial ended. Why? Because it had achieved its intended purpose. It had achieved its intended purpose. What was its purpose? Well, remember what Mark says in Mark chapter 6, verse 52? Mark 6:52 says, for they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, and their hearts were hardened. It let them see they weren't as strong as they thought they were. They weren't as spiritual as they thought they were. They weren't on the top as much as they thought they had been. And many of us, and perhaps most of us, have a faulty view of ourselves. And we really think we're stronger than we are. So God says, well, let's see if you are as strong as you think you are. This is a test. And he allows, why? Because the moment you begin thinking about your independent strength and stop depending on God, then what's going to happen is there's going to be a major breakdown in your life. And God is going to remind you that you're not depending on him by allowing those breakdowns. So one reason was to give them a proper self-assessment. They had forgotten everything Jesus taught them. He had taught them a few chapters earlier that the Father cares for them, that he cares for them more than he cares for sparrows. He knows the number of hairs on their head. He told them to be anxious for nothing. I mean, he had gone through all of this, and they forgot Sunday's sermon. So in order to remind them of Sunday's sermon, he gave them Monday's trial. Trials are designed to take you back to what you learned. Now tell me, when you're in school and you fail a test, you get to retake it. And if you fail enough of them, you repeat the grade. So if you don't want to retake tests and keep going, some of us been in the same trial 10 years. We get out of it only to find out, look back up, same thing, different shape, color, form, but we're in the same thing. Wouldn't it dawn on you, maybe you haven't studied. Maybe we have not taken God seriously. God doesn't bring us to church to hear the word, to not learn it. Because when you don't do something with what God gives, you become hard. And you don't feel it anymore. You don't see it anymore. You become hardened at it. So that's one of the things God has to do. He has to soften our hearts. That's why he let him see a ghost. He could have healed him from the mountain. I mean, he could have solved the trial from the mountain. He could have said, storm, be still. No. They need to be shook up. He shook them up. God allows shakeups in our lives to call our attention back to him. But he also allows trials to show us that he's greater than the trial we're facing. He walked on top of the trial. One of the benefits of trials is to let you see God is bigger than your problem. There's one thing I've learned. There's no challenge I face that God is not bigger than. And that's why, people always tease me about dreaming this and dreaming that and dreaming the other. But those are tiny things to me. Those are minute things to me. Because God has shown me enough in my history that anything out there is nothing. It's nothing. Because I'm measuring it against God. I'm not measuring it against man or the thing itself. So those are small things. Because of the size of God, he's bigger than those trials. The next principle you need to know is that trials only end when the lesson is learned. So if you don't want to keep taking this test, let's study this lesson so we can take it one last time and be done with it. You don't want to go through this again. Learn the lesson the first time. Here's a nice one. To pass your trial is the fastest way to get where you're trying to go. John 6:21 says, telling the same story, and when he got in the boat, they looked up and they were on land. When Jesus got on the boat, they looked up, the storm died, and when the storm died and they could see, they were where they were trying to go. If you want to get where you're trying to go, you better get Jesus on the boat. You can row all you want, but if Jesus is not on the boat, you'll be going in circles. But if you get Jesus on the boat, when he clears the trial, you look out, you were exactly where you were fighting and fussing and cussing and straining and doing everything to get. He got you there, and you didn't even know you were there. When Jesus is on the boat, you arrive at your intended destination. And notice what happened. It says, verse 33, and those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, you are certainly the Son of God. That's the bottom line. We know who you are now. This is the first time they seriously said he's the Son of God in their whole 2 years with him. Up until this time, you bad, you good, you strong, you nice. No, you God. You're God. Now they had learned that lesson of the loaves and the fish. Guys, this isn't just to show you a nice seafood buffet miracle. This thing is to let you know I'm God. And what did they do? They worshiped him. See, when you know Jesus is God, coming to church is no problem. Getting up and spending time with him is no problem because you're dealing with God. And I got this trial, I'm dealing with God. The concept of Jesus had been expanded because of that trial. And if God has you in a trial, he wants to expand your concept to him, not just bail you out of the trial. And until you get a bigger view of him, you'll stay in the water.
Dr. Tony Evans, with important insight on Christ's authority over our trials, part of his powerful 8-message series called The Authority of Christ. As I mentioned earlier, this entire CD collection is yours with our thanks when you make a contribution of any size to help make this ministry possible. But don't wait, this special offer ends tomorrow. You can make all the arrangements online at tonyevans.org. Or let one of our resource team members help you by calling us at 1-800-800-3222. Our phone center is open 24/7 for your convenience. Again, that's 1-800-800-3222. Tomorrow, Dr. Evans will bring us the final message in our series on the authority of Christ with a look at the Lord's ultimate victory over death. Be sure to join us. The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you.